Pekin Community High School District 303 Board of Education regular meeting is now in session. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Allison Greeny.
Here.
Hill. Here. Hoheimer.
Here.
Rui.
Here.
Wrigley.
Here.
Howard.
Here. We have the required quorum, and we will move on with the approval of minutes. Those minutes being the Labor Management Relations Committee meeting of December 4th, 2014. We have the Student Achievement Committee meeting of February 19th, 2015. And then we have the Operation and Maintenance Committee meeting, the regular board meeting, the first closed session, and the second closed session. Those four meetings are all of February 23rd, 2015. We also have a special closed board meeting of March 2nd, 2015. Another special closed board meeting of March the 9th, 2015. Another special board meeting of March the 12th, 2015. In addition, we have a closed session of that March 12th meeting also. At this point, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Hill, to approve the minutes as presented. Are there questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Hill. Aye. Allison Greeny.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Wrigley. Aye. Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Minutes stand approved as presented. Next item on the agenda, communications, public comments, and participation. As is our tradition, we'll begin with board applause, and tonight, Mr. Alessandrini, may we start with you?
Certainly. Over this past weekend, I attended the IHSA boys basketball tournament in Peoria, bought a program, opened it up, and noticed that for the school year 2013-2014, Pekin High School was recognized having academic excellence according to the IHSA in all our activities. And we were the only Middle Illini school listed.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. That's a great one. Mr. Hill, how about you?
Yes, I'd like to congratulate the PCHS speech team. This will make its 49th appearance at the national tournament in Dallas, Texas this June. Competing will be senior Annika Rockhill in international extemporaneous speaking, sophomore Danielle Killian in dramatic interpretation, and a first alternative to the national in humorous interpretation is junior Riley Blooms. And congratulations to both our national qualifiers and our first runner-up.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. The Speakin' Dragons have a long and proud tradition of excelling in that arena. How about you, Mrs. Hoheimer?
I would just like to congratulate the PCHS music department for the successes this past weekend in Quincy, the Showcase of Excellence. The Pekin Notable Show Choir and PCHS Jazz Band and Jazz Ensemble performed and returned home with many awards. The Jazz Ensemble received Best in the State of Illinois, Best in the Large School Class, Best in the Top Division, Gold rating for all three groups, Best Rhythm Section of the Day, and the highest overall score of all the groups. The Notable Show Choir received Best in Large Class, Best in State of Illinois, second place in the Top Division, Gold rating, and second runner-up in the finals overall competition. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. How about you, Mr. Wrigley?
Yeah, I would also like to congratulate a portion of the music department, particularly the Notable Show Choir that received a second place in the Open 4A class this Saturday, the 7th of March. at Fort Madison, the Stars and Spotlight competition. They advanced to finals where they received Best Choreography and placed first runner-up out of 12 schools overall. Congratulations to the notables for being great ambassadors of Pekin Community High School.
Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. How about you, Mr. Ruby?
I would like to congratulate the girls basketball program this year for winning earning the most wins in the history of the program. They've had an outstanding year, and I think they're pretty young as well, so I think there's a bright future for them. So I'd like to extend a congratulations to that program.
Thank you, Mr. Ruby. I have a board applause tonight that I'm really kind of excited about. Department Chair of CTE, Mr. Steger, was here earlier, and he helped me with this, and he's not going to get to hear what I say. Ms. Brucker, you'll just have to make him watch your video. Take you back in time a little bit. November the 17th, 2013, a tornado ripped through the area, hitting Pekin and Washington. And that's the foundation for a board applause that I'm very excited about. Our CTE kids are partnering with a company in Peoria called Premier Fabrication. They do a lot of steel fabrication work, and they're really excited about a lady there named Lily Vore, who's a very enthusiastic contact. And Premier is providing the funding, and then they'll also do some elaborate fabrication as needed if it surpasses the capabilities of our CTE kids. What they're going to do is, when that tornado ripped through Washington, there's a mini golf course right in the center of town called Hillcrest, and it just ripped the daylights out of that golf course. And our students are going to build one of the holes over again for them, and I like it because it's cross-curriculum. It's going to involve our welding kids, it's going to involve our computer-aided drafting kids, our construction kids, Ms. Brucker's graphics kids, and I don't know how they can get out of this without engaging the art students as well. But I saw a presentation earlier today of what it's going to look like, and it's really, really neat. It's a big old castle, and it has 2 moats that you can put your ball through. It's not really water, it's painted to look like water, but your ball can go through either moat. Or in the center, there's a big old drawbridge, and you can put your ball through the drawbridge. And then on top of this castle, coming over and looking very menacing, is a Pekin High dragon. And it's really, really going to be a work of art when it's completed. I've made Mr. Steger promise me that moving forward, he'll have a picture for me that I can share with you. I also need to mention that involved in this process as well is Illinois Central College, and they're kind of like the gatekeeper of the whole process. A lot of those holes, the concrete foundations got damaged, and they're overseeing the new foundations. We were fortunate, the hole that we got to do, our foundation is intact, so all we have to do is build up on it. But as you can see, I think it's an exciting board applause because our kids are creating and they're caring for the community around them, and they're all involved and excited, and it just gives a whole new dimension to the process of education. Couldn't be more proud of our kids. And that's my board applause. Thank you. Next, we have Emily. We always look forward to Emily. How are you? Good, thanks.
Well, the end of the year seems like it's coming up really fast for Student Council. Within this past month, we've had our Library Family Fun at the District 108 schools and the library as well. And we've also had our Morph Dance, both of which went really well, and we had a good turnout for both of those. Our exec board and a few other members went to Hopewell 2 Fridays ago, and our Honor Council book was recognized. And so our Honor Council book will be continuing on to the state convention in May because of that. And we've split into our last committees of the year, which are Teacher Appreciation, Senior Send-Off, a Fundraising Committee, and Senior Citizens Prom. We are also working on our elections, which will be this Friday for the next year's exec board. And we're getting ready, training all of them and figuring out how we're going to schedule everything next year. And so next month, I will be bringing our new president, Sarah McKenzie, with me to watch and try to give it a go for next year. So we're looking forward to the end of the year, and we're getting started back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Tell me, are you part of the Honor Council?
It's actually our historian, Hannah Dunn, but it's a collective through all of the events that we do, so.
I've received emails back and forth from her.
Yeah, she said she's
Yeah.
been emailing you, you guys have been helping her out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a fun person to interact with.
Yeah, we're really proud of that book. This is our third year in a row getting rewarded, so we're really excited about that.
Well, I believe you're completely deserving, and we appreciate all the hard work you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like to address the board on a non-agenda item? If you would like to address the board on the non-agenda item, you may do so at this point. If, however, you have an agenda item, that will be entertained at the time the board gets to that agenda item. Seeing no one moving, we'll move on to approval of claims.
Mr. President, I move for the payment of the monthly warrants in the amount of $1,887,656.55 per summary information found on page 55, detailed information found on pages 85 through 171 is supporting material.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Do we have a second? Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Are there questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Claims will be paid. You will also find bank balances, district investments, and the medical care report, all of February 28, 2015, on pages 57, 58, and 59. You'll find a financial statement of that same date on page 60, along with board bills and manual checks of March 23rd, and I think they're under separate cover. Next item, we have a request for closed session. I'll be looking for a motion for closed session regarding the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Also, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or the representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, and also the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, and also the setting of a price for sale of lease of property owned by the public body. Do we have such a motion? Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Hill, to go into closed session. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. The board will go into closed session. At the end of closed session, the board will reconvene and continue with the public's business. Let the record indicate the board is back in open session at 7:38 p.m. Next item on the agenda will be the consent agenda. Before I call for a motion, is there anyone on the board who would like a separate vote on a particular item? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for board approval of the consent agenda, item 5.1.1 as presented, including the personnel report, pending background checks as necessary. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Holheimer. Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Motion by Mrs. Holheimer, second by Mr. Alessandrini to approve the consent agenda as presented. Are there questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Holheimer,
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Consent agenda approved as presented. Next item, we have policies for a second reading. Mrs. Holheimer.
Yes, the policy committee is presenting 6 policies for a second reading. Those policies are 4.60, 6.280, 6.340, 7.50, 7.100, and 7.270.
Thank you, Mrs. Holheimer. The fact that this motion comes from committee means that a second is not required. So I would ask, are there comments or discussion on these policies?
Just so we're clear, it's second reading also for the adoption of.
Right.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Alessandrini. No questions? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Holheimer,
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Policies as presented are approved. Next item, we have renewal, oh, that's a bad one. Renewal of Illinois High School Association membership. Mr. DePace.
This is an annual occurrence that we renew our membership of the IHSA. Several years ago, the IHSA stopped collecting membership fees, so there is no actual cost involved with this, but it is an action item that we need to take. So I would recommend the board approval to certify that Pekin Community High School is recognized by the Illinois State Board to renew PCH membership in the IHSA. Excuse me.
Motion by Mr. Wrigley, second by Mrs. Holheimer. Questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Wrigley,
Aye.
Holheimer,
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Renewal as presented is passed. Thank goodness it's not removal. Next item. PCHS speech team trip to the national competition in Dallas, Texas. Mr. DePace.
As was mentioned during the board applause tonight, we do have 3 members of the Speakin' Dragons that will be traveling along with Mr. Ewan and Mr. Pyle to the national competition in Dallas, Texas, June 14th through the 19th of 2015. There is an itinerary that was left for you. They will be departing from Midway Airport in Chicago on the 13th and flying to Dallas, get their registration, and returning via Southwest Airlines to Chicago Saturday, June 20th. So it's my recommendation that the board approval of participation by the members of the PCHS speech team in the National Forensic League's national tournament to be held in Dallas, Texas on those dates as presented.
Thank you, Mr. DePace. We'd be looking for a motion to that effect.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Holheimer. Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Motion by Mrs. Holheimer, second by Mr. Alessandrini for board approval of participation by members of the PCHS speech team in the National Forensic League's national tournament to be held in Dallas, Texas, June 14th through the 19th as presented. Questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Holheimer,
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Good luck to the Speakin' Dragons. Next item, bid for professional services and installation to upgrade the district's network. Mr. DePace.
Last month, we had Jason Stefan, our network administrator, here to go over some proposals that we had received. We met again this afternoon with the technology committee. And if you will look on page 197 of your materials, you will see the bid for $155,549.90, which will replace the equipment that we currently have to upgrade our network. On the next page, if you look at that, those next two figures, the $40,315 and $28,818, those are for additional things that we are not approving at this time. That would give us additional wireless connectivity and replace some of the wireless connections that we have now. And some of those wireless connections are fairly new, and they will operate with the new network coming in. So at this time, we're not going to be approving that. We're only going to be approving the $155,549.90 to upgrade the network, as well as the $9,400, which is the professional services to do the configuration and then installation of that material. So it's my recommendation that the board approve the bid as submitted by PDS, the amount of $155,549.90 plus $9,400 for professional services and installation to upgrade the district's network, subject to the provisions of the Prevailing Wage Act and approval of E-rate funding, this is also part of the E-rate. We would get, if we qualify, we would qualify if we obtain that funding, we could get back as much as 60% of this back from E-rate funding.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Zepatis. Is that Mr. Rui?
That was Mr. Ridley.
Mr. Wrigley? You guys sound alike. Thank you, Mr. Wrigley. Sorry about that. Do we have a second?
Second.
She sounds different.
Thanks.
All right. We have a motion by Mr. Wrigley and a second by Mrs. Hoheimer. Are there questions or comments? Mr. Zepatis, does this upgrade take us way out into the future? I know you
This will
and I-
take us quite a ways out. One of the other things that we need to look at doing is upgrading the fiber internally in the building, and that's something that we'll be looking at through the budgeting process. But if we're able to do that, right now we could easily make it to be. Right now we have a 100 meg upload and 50 meg download speeds, and I may have that backwards of upload and download. I never know which one's which sometimes. But with the fiber that we could put internally, we could go as much as 1 gig or 10 gig or 40 gig, all by just changing as the need arises, or as this upgrade reaches its end, the next upgrade could boost it and not have to change the fiber at all.
So the fiber would carry us a long ways into the future.
Yes.
You basically would just have to address what feeds into where it begins at the fiber and where it comes out the other end of the fiber.
Correct.
Which would be an affordable thing to
Right,
do.
and that also, that fiber also, that upgrade we've been talking about, we're looking at that with the technology committee, that also is E-rateable, so we could potentially get 60% of that back as well.
So it's very forward thinking and it gives us a great deal of flexibility.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'd like to also add, unless I have my facts incorrect, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, last year this was brought to us and there was just a number thrown out of $225,000 that you needed for this upgrade, and then that didn't go through. And you went back and did this work, and actually, even without getting money back from E-rate, you've saved $60,000, and the product is better than what we thought we were going to.
Right, even the other bid that we do have from NetTech, the combination of matching, looking apples to apples, was $238,721. So, yeah, we had a considerable
It's
savings
good
by
work.
being able to do that.
You got a better product and you spent less money on it.
Right.
So, congratulations.
I think that's what happens when you do your homework. I mean, really.
We have in the motion and the recommendation with approval of the E-rate funding, I mean, whether we qualify, isn't this something we're going to have to do anyway?
More than likely, but I want to have it in there with paying the E-rate funding. We can always accept the bid anyway, even without the E-rate funding, but that gives us the flexibility that if we don't get the E-rate funding, we could maybe modify it if we wanted to. That's the only reason it's in there that way.
And when will we know about the E-rate funding?
We're going to submit that by the end of this week. Hopefully we'll know within the next month or month and a half that whether we got the E-rate funding. It's going to be different because the E-rate has changed considerably on how that all fits together with Category 1 and Category 2. And so there's a lot more people applying for Category 2, so I don't know. They actually extended the deadline. The deadline was supposed to be Thursday this week. They've extended the deadline to April 16th. The email that I got was because the nation's largest school district requested more additional time, and they were granted that, so consequently everyone was granted that additional time.
Further questions about the district's network. Thank you, Mr. DePatis. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Wrigley,
Aye.
Holheimer,
Aye.
Allison Greenie,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. The network will get a much-needed upgrade. Thank you. Next item, request approval of Health, Life, Safety Amendment number 16. Mr. DePatis.
Yeah, you will find in your materials on page 204, the latest Health, Life, Safety Amendment. All the items that are there are C items, and consequently, those are items that are not necessarily required that we do, but we want to get the amendment in the process of potentially having it approved. If the amendment is approved, that allows the district to be able to use Health, Life, Safety funds to cover the costs of those. The reason we wanted to get it through there now, it won't require an additional bonding at this time. It may at a later date, but at this point in time, this will allow us to know whether there's Health, Life, Safety funds available, and consequently, then the budgeting process will help, 5 to 6 years down the road to know exactly where those funds might be coming from. So it's my recommendation that we approve the Health, Life, Safety Amendment number 16 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mr. Hill for the approval of Health, Life, Safety Amendment number 16. Questions or comments? Just for sake of reminding everyone, in the health, life, safety process, things are categorized into groups. And you have to do A items first, you have to do B items second, and then you have to do C items. So we can't do the C items until we've exhausted the A's and the B's. But Mr. Paytas is getting this in the pipeline so that we can be prepared, so that we can act quickly when that time comes.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments on Health, Life, Safety number 16? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Allison Greenie,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Holheimer,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Health, Life, Safety Amendment number 16 is approved as presented. Next item, proposal for realty services. Mr. DePatis?
Yes, we talked previously about the fact that the board and the district like to move the possibility of realtors around when we sell the building trades house. Every time we sell a building trades house, we have to go through the bid process, sealed bid process. This is just would be if the sealed bid process does not get any bids for the house located at 1832 Whitetail Lane. Then we would look at having a realtor take that house on so that we could sell that property. And it's my recommendation that we would enter into a contract, if necessary, with Dick Scotty with Caldwell Banker of Pekin, Illinois for realty services should the building trades house at 1832 Whitetail Lane not be sold by the sealed bid process.
So moved.
Mr. Wrigley?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wrigley, second by Mrs. Holheimer to enter into a contract, and the key words are if necessary, with Dick Scotty for sale of the building trades house at 1832 Whitetail Lane. Comments or questions?
Just so we're clear, last year's house is with Brad Bernard. This year's house, if it doesn't sell, would be
With Dick Scotty, correct. Yes, we have a current contract with Brad Barnard for the house that's on Hunter's Trace. I think it's 1804 is the number.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandrini. Any other comments?
If we don't sell that house and that contract expires, will we renew with Brad, or will we move on to Dick Scotty?
That would be up to the board. I think we could look at that either way. I mean, currently we have the contract with Brad for that 1804 Hunter's Trace. Hopefully we won't have to get to that point, but that would be something the board could consider either way.
Further comments? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Wrigley,
Aye.
Holheimer,
Aye.
Allison Greenie,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll enter into a contract with Mr. Scotty if necessary. Next item, Mr. DePatis, termination of employment.
I would recommend that the board approve to terminate the employment of Chad Youngers effective 31 March 2015 for the reasons stated in the proposed termination notice, which can be found in your materials on page 207, presented by the superintendent to the board, and that the superintendent sign and cause to be served on Chad Youngers said termination notice.
Thank you, Mr. DePatis. I'll be looking for a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Alessandrini. For board approval to terminate the employment of Chad Youngers effective March 31st, 2015. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Employment terminated. Next item, a proposed release agreement. Mr. DePatis?
Yes, we have a release agreement that our attorney has worked on, and that my recommendation is that the board approve to present Chad Youngers with the proposed release agreement provided by the superintendent to the board, and that if Chad Youngers agrees, which we got email confirmation that he has agreed to that this afternoon, that the superintendent sign and execute the agreement on behalf of the board and the school district.
Motion for approval?
Thank you, Mr. DePatis.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mrs. Hoheimer. To approve the proposed release agreement. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Release agreement approved as presented. Next item, resolution for reemployment. Dr. Owens.
I would recommend board adoption of the resolution for reemployment for the 15-16 year as presented, starting on page 211. I'll read this for you. Whereas the teachers hereinafter set forth are probationary teachers, and whereas the Board of Education has determined that such teachers shall be reemployed for the 15-16 school year. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of Pekin Community High School District 303, Tazewell County, Illinois as follows. Jamie Adolphson, Severn Berg, Mary Kate Beyer, Cassandra Billieu, Samantha Bledsoe, Teresa Bridges, Elizabeth Bohannon, Allison Brucker, Randy Calvert, Tim Carroll, Andrew Clark, Karen Cole, Jeremy Crouch, Zachary Deely, Erica Edgeworth, Diana Eaton, Megan Flanagan, Ann Gallinger, Ryan Geist, Andrew Gillum, John Giovanetto, Clint Gossmeyer, Heather Green, Larry Hallstrom, Travis Hastings, Mary Hudson, Patrick Louder, Jill Mason, Brett McGinnis, Jeanette Odell, Matt Oyer, Chris Peterson, Matt Prale, Scott Pyle, Megan Ramlow, Greg Reese, Kevin Rudans, Teresa Slover, Zach Smith, Sarah Stout, Ann Swanson, Elizabeth Swingle, Jacob Weekman, and Justin Yang shall be reemployed for the next school term. That the President and Secretary of the Board of Education are hereby authorized and directed to send said teachers specified above a written notice of this board's decision to reemploy said teachers, which notice shall be substantially in the form of the exhibit attached hereto. That the superintendent or his designee shall personally deliver a copy of said notice to the teachers. This resolution shall be in full force and in effect forthwith upon its passage, adopted 23rd May of March 2015 by the following roll call vote.
Motion for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. They're in a hurry. Motion by Mr. Alessandrini, second by Mrs. Hoheimer, to approve that list of names as presented. Comments or questions? I'd like to commend you, Dr. Owens, for an extraordinary job reading those names. As I followed on the list, I got a little nervous on a couple of them, but it didn't faze you in the least. Does that come from reading names at graduation? Is that?
Well, a lot of those people on that list I hired, so I would hope I would know their
There
names.
you go. So you have more than passing knowledge
Yes,
then.
hopefully.
Okay. Mr. White, are you ready to call the roll?
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hoheimer.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Those people as listed are reemployed. And congratulations to each and every one of them. Next item, resolutions for reemployment granting tenure.
I actually have two resolutions I will read at the same time for adoption, recommending resolutions for reemployment granting tenure for the 15-16 year as presented. Whereas the teachers hereinafter set forth are completing their 4th year of probationary teaching service at Pekin Community High School during the 14-15 school year, and whereas the District Number 303 Board of Education has determined that such teachers shall be reemployed for the 15-16 school year and allowed to enter upon contractual continued service. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of Pekin Community High School District 303, Tazewell County, Illinois as follows: that Mike Bone, Chase Bushman, Deanne Gresham, Tara Kulkarni, Grace Ortega, Joel Schmig, Ashley Sharp, and Cole Stoner shall be reemployed for the next school term, and accordingly that said teachers shall enter upon contractual continued service. That the President and Secretary of the Board of Education are hereby authorized and directed to send said teachers specified above a written notice of this board's decision to reemploy said teachers, which notice shall be substantially in the form of the exhibit attached hereto, and that the superintendent or his designee shall personally deliver a copy of the said notice to the teachers. This resolution shall be in full force and in effect forthwith upon its passage, adopted this 23rd day of March 2015 by the following roll call vote. I will also read the next resolution. Whereas the teacher herein set forth completed her 4th year probationary teaching service at Pekin Community High School in December of the 14-15 school year, and whereas the District Number 303 Board of Education has determined that such teacher shall be reemployed for the remainder of the 14-15 school year and the 15-16 school year and allowed to enter upon contractual continued service. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of Pekin Community High School District 303, Tazewell County, Illinois as follows: that Susie Shepard shall be reemployed for the remainder of the 14-15 school year and the 15-16 school year, and accordingly that said teachers shall enter upon contractual continued service. This resolution shall be in full force and effect forthwith upon its passage, adopted this 23rd day of March 2015 by the following roll call vote.
At this point, I'd be looking for a motion to that effect. Karen, Mrs. Hoheimer? Okay, second by Mr. Hill. Motion by Mrs. Hoheimer, second by Mr. Hill. Resolution for reemployment granting tenure. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Howard, just
Yes.
one question. Do we need to vote on these two resolutions separately, or can we vote on one?
I'm under the impression we're voting on simultaneously.
Yes,
Nothing wrong with that, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Unless somebody wants them split.
Unless somebody wants them split. Okay, that's a good question, though. Might have been a possibility. Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hoheimer,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Those people are reemployed and they now have tenure, and for that we congratulate them. Next item, bids for summer work to replace the kitchen walk-in cooler / freezer. Mrs. Schaefer.
We had a bid opening on February 25th, 2015 in the superintendent's office for work to be done this summer to replace the kitchen walk-in cooler freezer. We had 5 contractors bid on this project. The highest bid on this project was $59,088 and the lowest bid was $41,500. Your support materials are on page 221 of your agenda that will show the bids that were in between. Our recommendation tonight would be to ask for the board to approve the low bid of Johnson Mechanical Services, Inc. in the amount of $41,500 to replace the kitchen walk-in cooler freezer subject to provisions of prevailing wage act.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. I'd be looking for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Rui. Motion by Mr. Rui, second by Mr. Allison Greenie to approve the replacement of the kitchen walk-in cooler freezer with John's and McCannville.
Johnson Mechanical.
Okay. What she said. Thank you. Are there questions or comments? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Rui,
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Bullheimer.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries and that cooler freezer will get replaced. Next item, bid to repair stadium and apply waterproofing phases 1 and 2. Mrs. Schaefer?
On page 223, you'll find the support for that bid opening. It was in the superintendent's office as well. It was on March 19th. We had 3 contractors bid on this project. We are proposing to do waterproofing and repairs to the stadium, one half of the stadium this summer and the other half of the stadium the following summer. We did ask that these bids though be submitted from contractors to bid on the entire project. So we had 3 bids, with the lowest bid being from Superior Waterproofing and Restoration Company, and their bid came in for the entire stadium at $545,000. Our recommendation tonight would be for the board to approve the bid of $545,000 from Superior Waterproofing and Restoration as presented to repair the stadium and apply waterproofing phases 1 and 2, subject to provisions of the Prevailing Wage Act.
Motion for approval.
Mr. Wrigley?
Second.
Mr. Hill beat you.
Okay.
This is hard to keep up with you people tonight.
Well, I didn't pay attention when I was supposed to vote. That's why he jumped out in front.
Motion by Mr. Wrigley, second by Mr. Hill for approval of the stadium waterproofing phases 1 and 2 as presented. Further questions, comments,
I guess
concerns?
just in the timing of this, is this up to us or up to them when they do? I mean, was it specifically
It's
half and half?
right. Yes.
And if they would zip through the first half, they wouldn't automatically move to the second half?
Well, the
It's
timeline
because
is-
we're keeping our eye on 4th of July festivities.
Yes.
That's like the end-all, do-all. You can't mess with that.
Right. They'll have their pre-construction meetings in April, and they'll discuss all of that.
I just want to make sure it was at
No.
our direction.
Yes.
Well, also, that helps with the budgeting process.
Right.
Right.
They're in 2 different years.
Right.
Right.
Further questions or comments? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Wrigley.
Aye.
Hill.
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Bullheimer.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Waterproofing will be done, and thank goodness for that. Next item, bid to improve softball facilities phase 1. Again, Mrs. Schaefer.
Support for that project's on page 225. That bid opening was also in the superintendent's office on March 18th. We had 3 contractors bid on this project. This is for phase 1 of the softball facilities. The high bid for this project came in at $382,285, and the low bid was $310,355.90, which was right around where we had anticipated it being with our budget. So the recommendation tonight would be to approve the low bid from W.M. Ockerly and Sons in the amount of $310,355.90 to improve softball facilities phase 1, subject to provisions of the Prevailing Wage Act.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. I'd be looking for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Rui. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Motion by Mr. Rui, second by Mr. Hill for board approval as presented with W.M. Overly to improve softball facilities subject to the provisions of the Prevailing Wage Act. Questions, comments, or discussion?
Mr. Rui or Mrs. Schaefer, can you remind us what phase 1 is and what phase 2 is so we know?
Sure, I can start, and Mrs. Schaefer or anybody else can chime in. Phase 1 will be a situation that will create the environment where they can participate on the diamond fall in the spring of 2016, I guess. Fence, diamond, all the grading, diamond being prepared, irrigation system, the outfield fencing. So basically, everything that would have to be in place for them to play the game, other than dugouts are not part of that, concession stand and press box is not part of that, restrooms are not part of that. It's basically the grading and creating the field for drainage and all those items so that they can play. But the other items are not that's part of phase 2. Am I speak correctly there, or is there something
The
else?
scoreboard is the only other thing that's.
Scoreboard will be in place as well.
And there will be some electrical that'll be run for the irrigation of the scoreboard.
We did talk a lot about the irrigation in phase 1, but we decided that it'd be best for the field in the long term and also getting the kids on the diamond in a quicker fashion if we went ahead and irrigated while we were in phase 1. So if all goes well, they should be out there without the restrooms and dugouts and those things next spring.
Just as a point of information too, that the bulk financial obligation of the project is in phase 1 also. Phase 2 is less expensive than phase 1.
I think it bears repeating that this is part of an incremental process to be done over a period of time in an affordable fashion that ultimately puts our softball girls in a position where they're playing on our campus. And over time, we hope to get them to the level that they hope to be at. And it's safe to assume that you've interacted with the cross-country people because they run their course right through that area too, right?
Correct. Yeah, we will reiterate that with them, that approval has gone through, that we will make sure that they have plenty of time to be able to reset their course, at least for this next fall. And then maybe after the whole thing is complete, they might be able to continue where their current course is, but we just have to see where the field ends up. And they may like their new course better, who knows?
Okay.
So we'll have to have a conversation with them soon.
I think the important thing is that you're keeping them included in the process.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Ruy,
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Allison Greenie.
Aye.
Hillheimer,
Aye.
Wrigley,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Softball Phase 1 is approved as presented. Next item, bid for summer work to replace the pillar entrance retaining wall. Mrs. Schaefer.
On page 227 of your materials, you'll see the support for that bid opening. That was held also in the superintendent's office on March 18th. We had 6 contractors bid on that project. We had a base bid that was required, and then we also had an alternate that was a deduct to that project. The high bid for the base bids was $329,166, with the low bid being $195,000 from F&W Lawn Care. We would recommend board approval of the resolution as follows. Whereas the Board of Education has sought bids for the construction of a retaining wall in the district, and whereas sealed bids were recently accepted, opened, and analyzed by the school administration and by the board, and whereas the board finds that F&W Lawn Care and Landscaping, F&W, submitted a base bid of $195,000 and an alternate D1 bid of $150,000. And whereas the bid documents indicated that the alternate bid amount was to be a deduct off the base bid if a portion of the project was not completed. And whereas representatives of F&W have explained that the alternate amount set forth on its bid was meant to be the total amount of the bid if alternate D1 was selected, and whereas the bid finds that the explanation provided by F&W is true and correct, as no reasonable bidder would have $45,000 for the project with alternate D1, and whereas the board finds that the error in the F&W bid was an informality in the bid process, and whereas section 9.2 of the instruction to bidders document provides that the board retains the right to waive informalities in the bidding, and whereas the board finds that the informality was inadvertent, I'm running out of breath, and not undertaken with the intent to gain an advantage in the bidding process, and whereas the board finds that neither the informality nor the waiving of the informality by the board resulted in an unfair advantage to F&W in the bidding process, and whereas the board finds that F&W Lawn Care and Landscaping is the lowest responsible bidder under the alternate D1 bid specifications. Now therefore be resolved by the Board of Education of Pekin Community High School District Number 303, Tazewell County, Illinois as follows. Section 1, the recitals set forth above are found to be true and correct. Section 2, the bid of F&W to complete the project under alternate D1 for $150,000 is hereby accepted. Section 3, the superintendent is authorized to communicate the board's acceptance of the bid to F&W and to take such other actions as are necessary to execute a written agreement. The terms of such agreement shall reflect the terms and conditions set forth in the bid documents, and where otherwise consistent, the accepted bid adopted March 23rd, 2015.
At this point in the process, I'd be looking for a motion to recommend board approval of the bid as presented to replace the pillar entrance retaining wall, subject to the provisions of the prevailing act. With- Yes, after we have a motion and a second, that's when comments are allowed. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Second.
Mr. Rudy. Sorry, I heard it both, each side. Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Rudy, to approve the bid as presented. Now is the point in the process where we entertain conversation, because you can't have conversation until you have a bid, and then you can talk about it. I assume by your reaction, you'd like to address the board. Okay, at this point, we would ask that you come up to the podium, that you identify yourself, and that you keep in mind that your speaking time is limited to 5 minutes.
My name is Richard Crumholz, and I put a bid in for the retaining wall for Crumholz Landscaping, and I believe the low bid should be rejected as a non-conforming bid and not responsible to the school district. We all, out of the 5 out of 6, we all did it correctly, and we take this seriously, and I think you should too, that this is not a fair way to conduct business on the matter of what they meant or what they implied. I don't think most of the time when you read a bid, it's red, it's black and white, it's straightforward. There's no, what do you think? And at this point, you don't know what they want to deduct for this job. You might say they want that money for the big, that's what they want for the job, but that's not inherent. And I don't think you can honestly say it is, as a board, that what they really meant, it doesn't really sit well. And I think the recommendation would be good to go with the next bidder. The next little bidder. I'm not sure, it just doesn't seem like it's a good way to, a good precedent to set. If you're giving people redoing a bid process, it's just not proper. Like I said, if you have any questions for me, I'd be thrilled for you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Crumholz. We appreciate your input. Further questions or comments from the board?
I appreciate the comments of Mr. Crumholz, but if you can go back to our last item that we just did, there was some minor mathematical corrections that needed to be made, and we just awarded that bid on the softball fields, and that was done. And I see no problem. I think we're very clear on this and can move forward.
Any other comments? Mr. White, would you call the roll, please?
Hill.
Aye.
Rui.
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Bullheimer.
Aye.
Wrigley.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Pillar entrance retaining wall will be replaced. Next item on the agenda has my name by it, and I'm excited to share this one with you. At this point, I would be looking for a motion to recommend board approval of the employment agreement effective July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2018 for the superintendent of schools, Pekin Community High School, to be awarded to Dr. Danielle Owens. Mrs. Bullheimer is making that motion.
Second.
Mr. Wrigley is seconding that motion. Other questions or comments on this motion? I don't really want to embarrass you, Mrs. Owens, and even more so, I don't want to embarrass your family in the back, but I can't help myself. Natalie and Carter, it's wonderful that you're here tonight. Chris, I'm glad you're here tonight. In the back of the room is Mrs. Owens' family. And I'm acknowledging you because you play an important role in this process. whether you realize it right now or not, you're giving up a part of your life or a part of your mom for the betterment of this school district
And community.
and community. This board has faith that this person is eminently qualified to do just that. But we want to thank you for your role in the process as well. Any comments or questions from the board before we vote? Mr. Wood? The motion was made by Mrs. Hoheimer. Second was made by Mr. Wrigley.
Boheimer,
Aye.
Ridley,
Aye.
Alessandrini.
Aye.
Hill,
Aye.
Rui,
Aye.
Howard.
Aye. Motion carries. Dr. Owens is hereby our upcoming superintendent, and we all couldn't be happier.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Moving along, we have some reports. Mr. Hill, do you have some resignations?
I do. I have 4 resignations to report. Troy Dice, teacher from the CTE department, effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year. Megan Flanagan, assistant coach for the drama program, cultural studies department, effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year. Greg Gilson, teacher for the social studies department and head coach of the boys soccer program, effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year. And Christy McGrath, teacher of the math department and senior class advisor, effective at the end of the 2014-2015 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Moving on, we have Policy Committee, Mrs. Hoheimer.
We had a very quick meeting tonight. The Policy Committee will be bringing back 2 policies for a first read next month.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoheimer. How about Operations and Maintenance, Mr. Rui?
We also met today, and I think most of what we talked about was obviously discussed and or communicated via Mrs. Schaefer. But I would like to point out, I think Mr. Wrigley will agree with me on this, is that I think the administration and Mr. Bonnet and Mrs. Schaefer particularly have done a wonderful job of managing the money and managing projects, so we are moving forward with not only maintaining our facilities in an appropriate and responsible way, but we're also able to start the softball field, which is in many eyes maybe considered an addition, but we feel like it's vital that the girls program is on our campus. And if it wasn't for the hard work of those people and putting the pencil to the paper, so to speak, to make this all happen, then I don't think it was going to be that way. And you knew when we started the idea of the softball field, it was always going to be contingent on what happens with health, life, safety money and the other projects we had going on, and making sure that we could afford to maintain our facilities. And I think they've done both. And I congratulate them on that. And I'm sure that the community and the students that go through here and participate in the softball program will be thankful for years to come.
Thank you, Mr. Rui. It's like so many things we do in this district. It's a team effort, and I think the team has worked together well. Next item, Labor Management Relations Committee, Mr. DePatis.
Yes, we met last week with Labor LMRC meeting and had a discussion over some technology issues that have been going on in the building that were just questions trying to get an understanding for the staff. We asked Jason Stefan and Cynthia Hinderleiter to be there so they could answer questions, and it helped to explain to the staff a little bit more. They had some questions about some things, and I think some of it was that Mr. Stefan has been more open and forthright with things that he's working on via email, and so they know some more things that maybe previously they didn't know about that had been going on. So it was just good to have the conversation, and that was what our meeting was basically over.
Thank you, Mr. DePatis. How about student achievement?
I'm going to ask Dr. Owens if she will address that. I was actually a little late getting to that meeting for another thing I had, so.
We continue to address through the SAC committee the 7-period day and what that potentially could look like here at Pekin High. And so this month we focused on, we had the students mock schedule for 7 periods at the same time they scheduled for their schedule for next year. So the presentation was made over what that potentially could look like at Pekin High in a 7-period day, whether teachers taught 5 periods and had 2 preps, or whether teachers taught 6 periods and had 1 prep. And of course, in every department it looks different, and it was a lot of information that was given to the SAC committee. So we continue to have a conversation around that, and the game plan is, because it is such a big chunk of the decision that needs to be made around 7-period day, that I'm going to work with the department chairs and go individually to each department and volunteer to meet with each department outside of the school day. And that way teachers can voluntarily come and learn what it would look like in their department. I can show them specific numbers to their department. We can have open and honest dialogue about what the intention is and what the thoughts behind all of this are, since we have a couple months before we rank what our choices are out of that committee. So I'm going to work with department chairs to get some time scheduled with each department throughout the building and have those conversations individually. So that's the game plan.
Thank you, Dr. Owens.
You're welcome.
How about the Girls Swim Cooperative with Tremont High School, Mr. DePatis?
We have been approached by Tremont High School. They have some interest in starting a co-op for girls swim. I have talked with Mr. Hinman, the superintendent at Tremont. I know that Mr. Kestner has also talked with their athletic director. Right now, they're at the point where Tremont is looking to see what their interest is in that. And then the athletic directors are going to be working toward a possible co-op agreement. There's a long way to go with it, so I don't know exactly if it will be something that will happen for this coming year. The agreement would have to go through both conferences that we are in the middle line. I have the conference that Tremont is in. There's just some things that have to happen to go through that, develop a process. So right now, that's where it's at. I did tell Mr. Hinman that based on the fact that they were requesting the co-op, that we would expect that the majority of the legwork would be on their end. Moving forward, we have a swim program. They would like to be a part of that. Currently, they do have a swim cooperative with the boys at Washington High School, but at this point, they are not sending any students to Washington High School for that cooperative. So that's another consideration is, if we go through this process, a cooperative would be 2 years. If we go through that process and then nobody comes, it won't affect us in the fact that for swim, in that the enrollment of all the high schools that are involved in the cooperative go into determining what class you're in. But in swim, there's only 1 class. So it wouldn't affect us in that sense, whereas it could in other settings, like maybe in football or something else, it might potentially do that. But we're kind of working through that. Some of the things we're looking at, it's just in the beginning stages of that, but I just wanted to kind of keep you abreast on where we're at with it.
So it's basically just a works in progress?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. DePatis. How about textbook requests for the 2015-16 school year, Dr. Owens?
It's that time of year where I come to you and give you a potential list of textbooks that are new to the district that we would like, that I will come to you in April for board approval of. Those are listed in your materials on page 230. There's a list of 8 books that would be potentially new to the district. Obviously, most are associated with new courses that we're going to offer next year. So the pretense is we would get approval. We certainly wouldn't order them if the class is not going to be taught for next year. And again, these are only books that are new to the district as a whole, not new additions. So those books are all in my office if you'd like to come in and take a look. Otherwise, I'll come back to you in April for board approval of those.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. Next item, future agenda items. Is there an item that a board member would like to see on the agenda for a future meeting? Hearing none, I'll move on to announcements about the president. Looking ahead, the ISB Central Illinois Valley Division Summer Governing Meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, May the 6th at Cezanne's on Galena Road in Peoria. There will be more information to follow at a later date. Also, you have a pamphlet at your place setting regarding ISB is providing training in 20 locations across the state. This training is required for every school board member elected or re-elected in the April 2015 election. Please see the hard copy flyer and registration brochure provided at this meeting. It goes on to say that there are some at Stony Creek in East Peoria on May 15 and 16, and at the Marriott in Bloomington Normal on May 29 and 30. The next general election for the District 303 Board of Education is scheduled for Tuesday, April 7th, 2015, and that's coming up pretty soon. I need to tell you that the next regular meeting of the Board of Education, which is the annual reorganization meeting, is scheduled for Monday, April 27th, 2015, at 6:30 p.m. in this room. At this point in the process, hearing no objections, I will declare this meeting adjourned until the next regular meeting. Thank you all for attending tonight.